people were always asking me, like, think about it, what's the worst that can happen? And I was like, there's something about that question that is wrong. I decided to switch the question around. What's the best that can happen? And when I did that, I was able to see all the possibilities that were hiding behind my fears. You have more chances of feeling motivated to actually go and face those fears, take action.
Hey, healthcare providers, you're listening to the Burnt Out to Lit Up podcast, hosted by myself, Erica, and my husband, Michael. We're an OTPT team that understands the healthcare industry's got some serious issues.
Inspired by our own experience with burnout, we've made it our mission and passion to help you navigate your career in healthcare by cultivating wellness, growing both personally and professionally, and advocating for a better workplace.
Whether you are a clinician or manager, new grad or seasoned vet, join us each week as we share interviews, research, stories, and strategies that will give you the tools to go from burnt out to your most lit up self.
Let's dive in.
What is your biggest fear, Mike?
I think, failure. Mm-hmm. Not failure like I'm afraid to try something because I might fail. I think failure as a broad term in my life. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like a really subjective thing, I think, like what people define as failure.
Yeah.
I define failure as mediocrity.
So how would you not be mediocre? Like what is that? Yeah. If that's your fear, why is it your fear?
Because I don't want to get to the end of my life and realize that all I did was what was expected of me. Mm-hmm. You know, and some, things that were easy or normal and like not unique in any way.
So what is your definition of living a life that rises above that? Like, what's your definition of that life?
I guess that's like a really
These are tough.
deep question.
And you weren't prepared for this.
I think, pursuing this business is part of it. Pursuing travel therapy is part of it. That's a unique lifestyle. Mm-hmm. That is always something that I'm going to look back on and be like, that was a really great thing that we did for those years. Mm-hmm. Anything that really is gonna, when I'm close to death, then I'm going to look back on and say, that was special and it was unique and I'm glad I did said thing.
Right. So for you, it's a fear of not living up to a life that you deem as pushing yourself to have a life that is fulfilling for you. Like if you were to hold back and do what's expected of you, then you wouldn't be living the life that you want to live.
I guess so.
Cool.
Yeah.
So my biggest fear, that's a part of it, and living a life that I want to make sure aligns with how my values, and I haven't been playing it safe, I think, in that way, because my whole life I've played it very safe. I was afraid of everything. And I talk about that with my guest, Michelle Puller. She is the founder of Hello Fears. But before we get into that, my biggest fear is not being true to myself. And so it kind of lines up with your fear, because I want to be true to myself and I want to be successful. I think, yes, failure is such a broad term.
Yeah, because it's not like, I want to try out for the baseball team, and if I fail, like, I'm scared of failing. It's like failure is in like a broad life sense.
It's a very subjective, type of thing. And I feel like as long as I stay committed to being true to myself, doing the things in my life that lift me up and make me my most lit up self.
LOL.
Those are the things that, even if I quote unquote fail at it, I wouldn't have, because I went for it, and that's what lights me up. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was afraid of everything growing up. I was even afraid of going on the monkey bars because I didn't want to fall. I didn't want to go upside down. So I would go on the swings and I didn't want to go too high. And I was afraid of speaking. So I was very quiet growing up. I stuttered really bad. So when it was my turn to read out loud in class, oh my gosh.
The worst.
Especially if I knew what little paragraph I was going to read, I would start rehearsing in my head. I was so scared. This was throughout my entire life. I stuttered. I still do, but when I was young, I definitely had problems with my speech.
Reading out loud is really like a high pressure situation.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And it really, it was scary. And, you know, I was afraid of looking stupid. Also, I had a lot of confidence, self-esteem issues. So not only did I not want to talk because of actual mechanics of my speech wasn't that great, but I didn't like to stand out. I wanted to blend in. I didn't want anyone to notice me because I was afraid of, because I wasn't confident.
You know what's interesting about the reading out loud thing is that I had the same thing, but it happened very suddenly.
Yeah.
Like 9th and 10th grade, I remember my English classes I really enjoyed because I was like, yeah, we get to like read this book because it's like a nice book. And I got to 11th grade and all of a sudden that switch flipped. Like I must have had difficulty like reading one paragraph.
Mm-hmm. One time.
And then from there, I was like, oh shit, like I don't want to sound like that again. And then I tried again and like really didn't want to sound like that. And it gave me more anxiety about it. And then it just like spiraled into this thing like in 1 year. I remember it was like a switch.
Reading anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I had like really good friends in my 10th grade English class, so it was like easier, and then my 11th grade English class, it was like different because I didn't know as many people. So
you're afraid to look like afraid to be embarrassed.
Yeah. So
yeah, and that fear of, you know, being a certain way or you know, coming off a certain way or not doing things a certain way, that can hold us back so much. And we can play it safe, and we just love to be in our comfort zones because they're very comfortable. And I love our guest so much because of all the awesome things that she's done with her career and challenging us to face our fears. I mean, she is such an amazing example of someone like me that was afraid of everything, that went head on to conquer her fears and has made a career out of it, and inspiring us to challenge our own fears.
Yeah, so what she did was, 100 days?
Yeah, so we talk about it. I don't want to give it away too much, but it's okay. We talk about it. But she did a project, the 100 Days Without Fears. And she filmed herself every day for 100 days facing a new fear. And she's incredible.
So like one of them was like skydiving.
A tarantula on her, being naked, many fears.
She was like
so many different things that she did.
She was like for an artist class.
Oh
right?
yeah, like a model for one of those naked models for an art class, and she's okay. I can fangirl all day, but
pretty cool concept.
Yeah, it's cool because I've learned, like, since I was so afraid of everything growing up. And wanted everything to be safe. And there's also a part of me, I think I've always had too, that, you know, in these past few years I've been really like exercising that muscle of being courageous. And you know what? My best friend, Sabrina, I remember one day, like this was 10 years ago, this was a while ago, I was trying to become a professional dancer then. And I had many years where like I didn't dance, so my technique wasn't up to par, and I don't want to say I sucked, but I did. I feel like I worked really hard, and you couldn't take that away from me. But sometimes I sucked. Okay. I was trying to make something work that couldn't work, like. With the ballet world, like you can't take breaks. If you want to be a professional dancer, like you're dancing from like 2 years old. And I know that's not always the case because Misty Copeland started dancing later in life. But when she started dancing, I stopped. Like I never got into pointe until like I was 18. So like, my hopes and dreams to be a professional ballet dancer was truly, really just like very slim. Not that it wasn't possible, but I realized that it just with my lack of experience, it just wouldn't be possible, whatever. That's a long story, but I would take open classes at the Miami City Ballet. With these open classes were open to anyone, but some of the company dancers, like this was summer, so they were off, but they would take, the open classes. And I was really scared because here I am, little me showing up to an open class with like these professional dancers. And it was like a beginning / intermediate class. And my friend Sabrina said I was the bravest scaredy cat she's ever known, because I would show up to these things that, perhaps, other people...
Probably still true.
I am still a really brave scaredy cat, and I do it more and more in bigger ways. Like I flew to New York City by myself to go to a conference. I've flown to Ohio to go to a conference by myself. I so many people, and this is not to put anyone down, but even like people I know are afraid to just take a flight alone, much less for me going to conferences alone and navigating that whole thing alone. And again, everyone has their own parameters, right? Because there are some things that people do that I am terrified of doing, like actually traveling to another country alone. We all have our own comfort zones. Nothing is right or wrong, but we all have what we deem as safe and something that's scary. And for me, it was very scary to travel to a conference by myself, but I started to do it, and it just got a little bit easier. And I'm so inspired by Michelle and her work, because you are faced with these questions that you have for yourself of, am I really playing it too safe, where I am I'm mistaking that for being happy, when in fact that I can achieve so much more. So her work has inspired me throughout the years. And her, along with like me channeling my inner scaredy cat, as Sabrina called it, throughout the years. And a lot of these things have come together, but her work has played a huge part in me, especially in the past 2 years of facing those fears I have and growing my business and those things. Michelle Poler is a creative and passionate social entrepreneur, keynote speaker, fear facer, and branding strategist. She is the founder of Hello Fears, a social movement empowering millions to step outside the comfort zone and tap into their full potential. Michelle's life took a spiraling twist in 2015 when she decided to get out of her way and embark on a journey facing 100 fears in 100 days while sharing it with the world, a project that quickly became a viral phenomenon. Since then, Michelle has taken the stage to inspire people around the world to step out of their comfort zone and become the best version of themselves. She has been invited to speak at TEDx, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Netflix, Microsoft, P&G, Toyota, Coca-Cola, and many more, as well as schools, colleges, and youth leadership organizations. Her work has been featured on CBS, CNN, Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, NBC, and Daily Mail, among many others. Michelle is originally from Caracas, Venezuela, and she holds a master's in branding from the School of Visual Arts in New York City. Early on in her career, she worked as an art director at Young and Rubicam for brands such as Hershey's, Wendy's, AT&T, and Revlon. Michelle and her husband and full-time business partner, Adam, travel over 120 times per year. As they do, they record a Spanish language podcast, Desde el Avión, meaning from the plane, sharing what it takes to build a business together and balance married life in the process. You can follow Michelle on Instagram at Hello Fears as she bestows her impact across the world, choosing courage over comfort and making everyone around her a little braver. And she has a book that has come out this week. So I pre-ordered her book. She talks about her book in the show. I just want to let you know because I'm very excited about it. And if you're into this, challenging yourself and overcoming your fears, then I highly recommend getting her book. So information for that is in the show and also in episode notes. And face your fears.
Yeah.
Leave us a review. Also, if you have a moment, and subscribe to us. We really appreciate you so much and your honest feedback. So thank you.
DM.
Huh?
DM.
Oh yeah, and DM us with your questions. Shoot us a dim. If you have a question you want us to answer on the show about burnout, stress, anything work related, wellness related, send us a DM. And we'll be answering your questions moving forward in the summer and fall. So thank you.
Thanks.
Enjoy the show. Healthcare professionals are going through a lot right now. From the front lines to those that have lost their jobs, we are all facing stress like we've never had to face before. And since the COVID-19 crisis began to unfold, we have been creating helpful resources, downloads, articles, and more. We recognize that there are so many different ways of coping with the COVID-19 crisis and quarantine life. Like so many others, I have been through so many highs and lows since all of this started, which inspired the creation of our new series, the Wholehearted Self-Care 31-Day Personal Care Series for Healthcare Professionals. This series is customizable to fit your preferences and intentions and is not a one-for-all formula. The goal of this 31-day series is to approach caring for our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual selves wholeheartedly and meaningfully during quarantine and beyond. This series is based on an evidence-based checklist approach to self-care and begins on Monday, May 11th. When you sign up, you will get a personal care checklist to get you started and a welcome kit that is sent to your inbox. You can sign up by visiting our show notes or go to joyenergytime.com to sign up, or you could also head over to our Instagram at joy.energy.time, and we have that link in our bio. I'm so excited and I hope to see you there. Let's do this together. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the Burnt Out to Little podcast. I am so thrilled to have you here today.
Hi, so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I have been following you for a long time, and I was one of the people that proofread one of the chapters in your book last year.
Really? Which one?
I can't remember. It was like one of the later chapters in the book, and you asked for feedback, and I sent in some feedback, and I was like, "This is so cool that you're having your community be so involved with your book."
That's awesome. Then your name should be on the book because I added in the acknowledgements page, so you should be there.
Oh wow, I can't wait. And we'll talk about we'll go into your book and everything in a little bit. But I want to ask you first, for those that are listening that aren't familiar with you, a little bit of your story. And you have such an interesting story. And I wanted to ask you, going back to when you were a child, would you describe yourself as someone that is courageous, or were you full of fears growing up?
Well, I had a lot of fears growing up. And what I realize now is that fear is very personal. So I didn't know this, but now as an adult, I've learned that for some people around me, like my friends, some of my friends and some of my cousins, they always consider me courageous because I was not afraid of doing some things that they were afraid of. But in my point of view, I always perceive myself as very fearful because I was always allowing fear to get in the way of my dreams. And also what I realized is that I had bigger dreams, like very big dreams since I was very little. And that's why my aspirations were not being fulfilled because of my fears. So I missed out on a lot of things growing up. Not even when you're like very little. When I was very little, I missed out on roller coasters and like those kinds of things that, every kid just loves it. And I was like, no way, I'm not even trying those things. Mm-hmm. And then after that, as I was a teenager, I started missing out on, for example, I never went camping in my summer vacations because I was too afraid. It was way too uncomfortable for me, and I just rather travel with my parents and stay comfortable. What else? Also, when I graduated, I never went like backpacking with my friends. They all went together, and I was like happy that I missed that, because it was like, no, that's too uncomfortable. I didn't go to study abroad like my friends did. So as you can see, I missed out on a lot of things, and that was just being a teenager. And then in my work life, then it was impacting me even more.
Mm. Wow, I can relate to that because I remember when I was little, I was afraid of going on the monkey bars, and I would see
Mm-hmm.
everyone else go on the monkey bars, and I was like, I'm not doing that. And and I was happy because I feel so like our stories are very similar. I was so afraid of everything.
Mm.
And what was the impetus for you to therefore go into this project, the 100 Days Without Fears project, when you did it at that time? And did you think that that would have opened as many doors for you as it did?
Well, so it was like a mix of things, like everything came together at the right time. For example, I just moved to New York, which was the city of my dreams. I wanted to live there for my entire life. And I dared to do it when I was 20, 25 or 26 years old. And I moved with my husband. So I was already married, and we were planning on having kids. And so he would tell me things like, I don't know, like I'm afraid for my kids because you are so weak, or at least you see yourself as a weak person, and so you're always depending on me and other people. How are you going to take care of our children? So he was afraid for our kids, and that came together with the fact that I'm living in New York, and I was not really enjoying it as much as I would have liked to, because I was always in my comfort zone. So at that point I was like, you know what, I'm 26 years old. I have the support of my husband. I am young enough to, do this project and face my fears. And if something happens to me, at least I'm not a mom yet. So I don't have that huge responsibility on my shoulders. But I want to be, and I want to be able to teach my kids courage. So I took advantage of the whole, life stage that I was in, my possibilities, and I decided to start facing my fears one by one for 100 days in a row.
Wow. Yeah. So that was an incredible project. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that, Michelle has a website and we'll link to all that later and you can learn more about her project. And you ended that with a TED Talk. And that, I heard you in other interviews saying that that was probably your biggest fear, is facing the fear of public speaking, and now you are a professional public speaker. So did you ever think that that project would lead to this, or that you would be living this lifestyle?
I never thought that. I mean, when I started the project, my aspirations were that I could do like an amazing project that then I could use as a portfolio piece to pitch to companies when I was going to find a new job. Because I
Mm.
moved to New York, I was working in advertising while I was doing a master's in branding. So I was doing both things at the same time. Then I added the project on top of that. So I was doing all of those. And my goal was to quit my job as soon as I graduate from the program. And I needed like a very strong portfolio piece to compete with the people in New York that are like
Mm.
high achievers, and they're like, so advanced. And I'm like, who am I? I need to compete. So that's why I did the project the way I did it. So two intentions: one, to become a braver person myself, but two, I wanted to put all of my skills into that project so I could then use it as my portfolio and show companies that I'm able to create a very engaging project, that I'm able to generate lots of traction, and that I'm a very creative person. So I edited videos, created a blog. It was like very, very cool in terms of branding. Plus, I was
Mm.
studying branding, so I had to be, on brand with what I
Yeah.
was doing. So that those were my two aspirations, and then suddenly, I decided to quit my job because it was just too much. And then by the end of it, I was already speaking at TEDx, which ended up turning into my career. But that was never my intention, and I didn't even know speaking was a career at that point.
Wow. So look how life unfolds, right? In like the best ways that sometimes we don't think something good is going to come out of this, but then we end up with something that, with things that we would have never thought of.
Yeah.
So now you are a professional public speaker. Do you still get scared before, especially now you're talking in front of hundreds and thousands of people?
I do. I always get nervous before going on stage, mainly because you don't know how that audience will react. And expectations play a big role. Sometimes when I see a room full of women and they look excited and whatever, and then I go on stage and they don't react the way that I was expecting, immediately my energy, like, I start to doubt myself. So it is still hard because you don't know. And sometimes I go in a room full of men that they look very serious, and I'm like, this is going to be not fun, God help me. And when I go on stage, they start laughing, they start engaging. So I understood now, like, how to play with my expectations so I don't get disappointed. So I try to always expect like the least, and convince myself that I'm going to do the best job possible, even if the audience is not responding in the way that I want to. But now I've been doing this for 4 years already, and I've been perfecting the same talk over the years to the point that I'm very confident now with the material that I have. So I feel a little bit less and less scared when I go on stage, because now I really trust that what I'm going to say has a huge impact on the majority of the audience. And it's okay if not 100% of the audience is engaged. But if I'm changing lives that day, even if it's 5 lives that I'm changing, then it is worth it. And so it's a whole like mental game. Like you need to hack your brain in order to do public speaking and actually like it.
Absolutely. I've been getting in a little bit of it, not quite to the like a way in which you're doing it, but it is really scary. And I grew up stuttering my whole life, and I still stutter. So actually
Wow.
speaking can be really challenging. So I was afraid, I've always been afraid of speaking, never rose my hand in class, never did anything. I was the quietest
Wow.
person ever, and then I decided to start a podcast.
That's amazing.
Just to
Proud
get
of you.
started.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And now it's been over 2 years of doing this, and you're right. It's like, you get to a point where you perfect your craft, and that goes with anything in life. And things can be scary, but you show up anyway, and you keep working towards it because you're making a difference.
Yeah.
And also, when you play Dura, I can't imagine anyone not enjoying it.
Yeah, that's a really fun moment because it's when I start dancing, right as soon as they say welcome Michelle Pollard to the stage. Doesn't matter if this is the most corporate company environment ever. It doesn't matter if in the audience you only see 80-year-olds. Like, I don't care. I go on stage, I start dancing reggaeton as like no one's watching, literally. And then I invite people to dance. So it's like a very awkward moment where people are like very unexpected. It's like, what? Why is she dancing?
Hmm.
And then nobody dances, and it makes it even more awkward. And everybody's like in their mind thinking, please, someone dance with her. And normally a few people dance, but the rest remain uncomfortably petrified in their seats. And that's the whole point, because at the end of the song, I'm like, thank you for not dancing. That was the whole point. You
Hmm.
just experienced what the comfort zone is all about, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So it's one of those, people feel like, ah, thank God, like I release the tension. And then by the end, I ask all of them to stand up. Like, that's the last thing I do before I leave. And then I play the song again, and everybody has to dance. This is not optional. I make them dance, and I say, you have to dance like no one's watching. You have to be your most authentic self right now. Go all out. And it's a very, very fun way to end the conference.
That is incredible. I wish I can ever attend one of your conferences.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah. So you challenge us to reframe a common question that we ask ourselves, which I love. That your alternative to this question is, what is the worst that can happen? Because that's our human brains kind of default to the worst case scenario. But
Yeah.
what is your alternative to that question to help us to reframe our mindset about fear?
Well, so what I realize is that while I was doing the project and people were always asking me like or challenging me to do different things, they were always like, think about it, what's the worst that can happen? And then that question was never motivating for me. It never really helped. And I was like, there's something about that question that is wrong, because every time someone asks me that, immediately I start thinking about the worst case scenarios. And I'm like, but I could really hurt myself. Like maybe I'm not going to die, but I can hurt myself, or I can, it could be physical pain or emotional pain, which is also very hurtful. And I started thinking of these negative things, and then suddenly I feel less motivated to face that fear. And so it was one day that I decided to switch the question around, and I asked myself, what's the best that can happen? And when I did that, I was able to see all the possibilities that were hiding behind my fears, because I realized that when you focus on the rewards instead of in the risk, you have more chances of feeling motivated to actually go and face those fears, take action, take risks in life in general. So I started applying that question to myself before doing anything, and it started really helping, because I was like, for example, just before going on stage, right? Imagine I'm in front of thousands of people. They're all expecting me, and I'm backstage and I start shaking because it's like, I hear the cheers of the crowd, but I don't know how they will react. It's a lot of people. Things can go wrong. My presentation can go wrong. My music can stop in the middle, because those things have happened enough time for me to know that it happens. So I'm about to go on stage. I'm terrified. And then I think, wait, what's the best that can happen? And in that moment, I try to imagine all the best case scenarios. And I'm like, okay, what if nothing goes wrong? What if my music plays? What if my technology works? What if people laugh immediately? What if they actually dance with me? What if at the end of it, they come to me with tears in their eyes saying that I changed their life? What if that happens? Because that is a possibility. And so just thinking about that, that possibility is what encourages me to go on stage, not only because I have to, because now I want that reward. So it changes everything, your attitude towards facing any fear, and it's really helpful.
That's wonderful. I love it. And once I heard you say that a while ago, I've been asking myself that, and it gets you in a totally other place that you wouldn't have been able to get to before. Um,
Yeah.
so what is your definition, like your personal definition of courage, and how can we tap into courage when we're afraid to do something? Because I don't necessarily think that I'll ever, or anyone can ever be totally fearless, but we can be courage in facing our fears and be scared but do it anyway. But we just have to tap into that courage.
Yeah, that's such a hard question. What is my personal definition of courage? I think courage is when you do what you actually feel like doing, despite the fear that you may have. And this takes a lot of self awareness, because we are bombarded with expectations, like external expectations from our parents, our community, our country, like where we're
Mm-hmm.
raised, our society. And we were raised that way. So in our heads, we have ingrained this checklist of things that we need to do no matter what. Like we need to go to school, we need to graduate from college, we need to find a good job, and we need to find a partner, and we need to buy a house, and all these things. And until we're not done with those, we can't get those out of our head. It's like those are our main goals in life. The problem is that when you achieve those goals, you start questioning if you actually wanted any of that. Like, because they told you should have it, and they promise us that happiness will come once we have all these things, under our wing or under our arm. But
Mm-hmm.
once you're there, you're like, okay, I have these things. Am I happy? I don't know. This feels okay, but I guess I'm not sad. But is that what you want life to be like? I don't know. Personally, I thought that I always wanted to live my life to the fullest and actually enjoy my life. And to me, happiness is to be able to enjoy my every day. Like not, oh, I'm waiting for my vacation, I'm waiting for the weekend, I'm waiting for my birthday. No, it's like everyday fulfillment, everyday happiness. That was my goal. And when I achieved all those things, like graduated, I got married, I, was living in a nice place, I was like, okay, I don't feel I'm living to the fullest. I'm just okay. I'm comfortable, and that's it. And then that's when I realized there's a difference between being happy and being comfortable.
Mm.
And if you want real happiness, you need to start asking yourself more questions. You need to start questioning what you thought happiness was and what people told you happiness was. And so then that's when courage comes in. Once you are clear of what you want despite other people's expectations, then you need courage to make those dreams and those goals a reality. And it's the courage of disappointing others, and it's the courage of honoring yourself above everything else.
Wow, I love that so much. You really, like, I would just want to highlight, you said, there's a difference between being happy and comfortable. And I think so many people don't realize it. So thank you for sharing that. In terms of imposter syndrome, because that is
Mm-hmm.
so big, and a lot of people experience that, and that's kind of what holds us back from choosing the happiness over the comfort. But what can we do when imposter syndrome is telling us, oh, we're not good enough? Like, who am I to live that life? Like, I'm supposed to live this life. Like, imposter syndrome is something that we all face, including myself. So do you have any tips for that?
Yes. So, imposter syndrome is such a big topic, and it's so important because when we face that, immediately we start to limit our possibilities, because we start to believe that we're not good enough, we're not capable enough, someone else is going to do a better job, so why even try,
Mm-hmm.
we convince ourselves of all these things that are not even true. And that's our fear speaking, fear of disappointing ourselves and hurting ourselves when if we fail, right? So there are many ways that we can fight this. I think the most important one is to start by contrasting instead of comparing. Because when the imposter syndrome comes, when we compare ourselves to other people, when we're always looking outside and trying to identify what we're missing, that's when we start to realize that we are not as funny as this other person, as social, as smart, right? All of these things that we are not enough of. And we start to tell ourselves that we shouldn't be where we are. We're not deserving of the things that we want or the things that we have. It is when we decide to contrast that we start to find our place wherever we are. And maybe it sounds complicated, but like I was saying, comparing is when we look outside, contrasting is when we look inside. So
Mm.
you have to look inside of you and think of the things that make you who you are, good and bad, all of them together, like your quirkiness, because it's not only about highlighting the positive, because no one is perfect, no one is only good and positive. We all have like a balance, and that is what makes us human. So I think that most authentic people are the ones that are okay highlighting all of themselves, not only the positive parts of themselves, and then embracing all of themselves. Because once you do that, once you embrace yourself, then more people will perceive you in the same way you perceive yourself. If you're always trying to hide yourself or hide something about you, it just looks skeptical and no one will trust you. You need to say, you know what, this is me. I have these things, I have these flaws. Let me embrace all of them, show myself to the world as who I am. Stop comparing myself with other people, because I will never be like them, because I'm different and there's a lot of value in being different. So, for example, I decided to embrace, I was first like thinking that because I'm international, I'm originally from Venezuela, I'm going to have a hard time making it as a speaker in the United States in English, because my accent is, not it's not perfect. Because I'm like pronunciation or even the words that I'm saying, I can be mistaken in the way that I speak. I could say words that are wrong. So I don't have the vocabulary of someone that was raised in this country. I don't know many of the words. Like my English is very basic. So I was like, oh, how can I compete with like real American speakers? And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to embrace all of it, even that. And so I'm going to actually be proud for the fact that I have an accent, because that only means that I speak more than one language, and I should be proud of that instead of ashamed of it. Then I'm going to start the presentations dancing reggaeton, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not American music. I'm going to like go, all out with my where I come from, with my nationality, my Latin, flavor, and I'm going to make other people like what I bring to the table. Like I like it because I love it. I love the fact that I'm Latin and that I dance reggaeton and all of these things. So how can I make other people like this as well? And then, for example, I heard things like the best speakers don't need any slides, right? When you're
Mm.
presenting. But I'm a graphic designer. How can I not have slides, right? That's my background. So this is part of who I am and my personality. So I have to go against what people say it's right, and I have to do what it's right for me. So all of these little things that I bring to the table is because I decided to contrast. If I was going to compare, I would have been dressing up as every other speaker, wearing those tight dresses and high heels, and my hair all perfect and a lot of makeup. And I'm doing quite the opposite. I'm dressing as I would dress to go to, a fun event, um, and doing all these things just to be different. So that is my encouragement for everybody that is listening: is try to be different, because that's the only way to overcome the imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I'm so blown away. And I'm, first of all, like you showing up, because like I said, I've been following you for so long that when I see your Insta stories of you doing reggaeton in a very corporate room, I at first I was like, oh my God. And then, and then I was like, wow, like she is so bold and inspires me. Like you have personally inspired me to show up more as myself, because I'm also Latina, and where I live now and far away from Miami, even I get questioned about my accent, and I was born in Miami. So
Wow.
it's kind of, it makes you feel a little bit like an outsider, but then once you learn how to embrace, all that you are, like everything you said about embracing your quirks and contrasting, you show up the way you are, you don't even realize how that can inspire others around you to show up the way that they need to show up as themselves. So not just for yourself, but for the rest of the world. Like you were doing everyone a disservice if you don't show up as yourself and you
Right.
let imposter syndrome hold you back.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great message.
Yes. So I'm excited to talk about your book, which I had told you off air, but I pre ordered and I'm so excited. Your book, Hello Fears: Crush Your Comfort Zone and Become Who You're Meant to Be. And you wrote this book to inspire readers to find meaningful happiness outside of the traditional definition of success. So I saw, first of all, your book is gorgeous. I don't think I've ever seen a book more beautiful than
Hmm.
yours, like just seeing it online. So I'm excited just for that, of course, and but of course for like the message. But what is the biggest message you want readers to take away from your book?
Um, wow, that's huge, because I divided the book into 10 chapters.
Mm.
Every chapter tackles a different fear that holds us back from becoming who we're meant to be. But definitely, I think the most important one is chapter 7. And it's funny because when you look at the table of contents and you look at all of them, I highlighted chapter 7. I even wrote down, if you only read one chapter, make sure it's this one,
Mm.
because I think that chapter can help you so much to make decisions in your life. And we're all the time making decisions, from small decisions like what to buy in the supermarket, right, to big decisions on, if we should accept a job, or if we should move, or who should we marry, and things like that. So it is huge for making decisions, and it basically teaches you the difference between choosing between growth and comfort, and how the real enemy of success is not failure like people believe, it's actually comfort. So I give you a lot of different stories, tools, practical advice, different situations, that will help you understand always when you are in front of growth and in front of comfort, and how to choose growth. Like, what are the tools to say yes to growth despite the fear? And one of the main things you have to know is that most of the times, the scariest choice that you have in front of you is the growth option. The one that doesn't scare you that much, that's the comfort choice. And it can be tricky because it's very personal. So what may mean growth for you may mean comfort for someone else, like for your mom, for your friends, for your coworkers. So you can't really ask people to help you make big choices, right? You and like in your heart, you have to know what's a right choice for you, what's a growth choice. And then also what is growth for you today can change and can mean comfort for you in a year from today. And at that point, you need to understand that you're making a comfort choice, even though it was a growth choice a year ago. So when to change. So yeah, that is definitely the most important chapter in the whole book. And I feel really good because last week my mom was getting a surgery, and I called her the day of the surgery in the morning, and I thought she was going to be so scared, like so in a bad mood and negative, because that's where I got my fears from, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit from my mom. Yeah. So when I called her, I was expecting her to be like, I'm freaking out. I didn't sleep the whole night. And she was like so calm that morning. And she was looking so beautiful and bright. And she was like happy. And I'm like, are you okay? Do you realize you're getting surgery this afternoon? And she's like, I'm feeling great. And I'm like, what happened? And she's like, I read your chapter 7.
Oh.
I was like, you're kidding me. That's what made you so like calm and happy. And she's like, yep, I'm making a growth choice today. And because it's a
Wow.
surgery that, she made the option. Like she was like, if I take care of my health today, then I will be healthy in the future. It was more comfortable to ignore the problem, and don't go into surgery and keep, living your life the way you're
Mm-hmm.
living, even though there's something wrong. It's more comfortable to stay as you are than to make a change and then to take action. And she was like, I'm taking action, which means I'm choosing growth, which means the best that can happen can actually happen. So I don't know. I just felt so proud that day.
Oh yeah, that what a proud moment. I mean, like that
Right.
to see that, especially in your mom. Wow. So I know this
Yeah.
book will serve as a compass for so many people, including myself, and I'm so excited to read it. So where can people find you and connect with you?
Well, so you can all find me at Hello Fears on Instagram. I also have my Michelle Polar, but no, don't waste time there. Go to Hello Fears if you wanna. Everything is on my Instagram. That's where I live. I'm always there, so make sure to follow, and you can even, write me a DM. I'll probably get back to you. And if you want to learn more about the book, go to hellofearsbook.com, and you'll have all the information there. And I'm sure you're all going to love it. And thank you so much for pre-ordering. You have no idea how happy that makes me.
I'm so excited. Well, thank you, Michelle, for taking the time to come on the show. I always ask all my guests this one last question before we wrap up. And what makes you your most lit up self?
Reggaeton.
Yo también.
See, music, yeah, like music, but it has to be the right music. And reggaeton is every time I'm down, I'm like not myself. I'm like doubting myself and my potential and all of it. And I'm like, why am I here? Whatever. Adam, my husband, comes and he plays the reggaeton, and he knows immediately I will start dancing, and it changes my mood and gives me the confidence that I need again.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this interview.